We actually have 6 webinars scheduled together over the upcoming year, and this is the first of 6 in the Women's Empowerment Series, so we're so pleased that you've decided to join us. As we get started today, we do have a few technical considerations to let you know about. The first is that if you would like to join the conversation on social media, we will be having some live tweeting from my team, and today we are going to use the hashtag #OwnYourPower. The second thing I'd like to let you know is that we hope that the chat on this webinar can be a place for you to connect and network and engage with the content. And so I would invite you at this time to go ahead and find the chat. And one of the things that you want to be sure to do is use the drop down to select all panelists and attendees so that not only those of us who are panelists can see your chat, but the entire group can see your chat as well. So just take a moment first to find that drop down so that you are chatting to all panelists and attendees. So welcome, and we would love to hear where you're calling in from. It looks like Canada and Philadelphia. And if you happen to be with a group at your organization today, maybe you have gathered for some professional development, why don't you go ahead and let us know in the chat about your organization group that's participating with us today. So welcome as you're coming. We are recording today's event, which is the first event in the Women's Empowerment Series with Bonnie Marcus, and we'll let you know more toward the end of the call about upcoming events and opportunities. I also want to let you know that we will have a giveaway today at the very end of the webinar. So we're going to have some conversation, and we're going to open up to questions from you, and then at the end of the hour, we will have the special giveaway. So we hope that you will stay on until the very end so you do not miss out on today's special giveaway. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, this is the Women's Empowerment Series with Bonnie Marcus. Today we are using the hashtag #OwnYourPower. And after some conversation between Bonnie and me, we will open up to questions from you. And at the very end of the hour, we will have a special giveaway. It looks like we have an international audience today, Bonnie. I see some folks in London, in New York, in France, in South Carolina. Hello, Jane.
Great.
So before we get started, I would like to take a moment to help those of you who may not know Bonnie. It looks like some of you do, but I want to give you a chance to meet Bonnie and find out a little bit more about her if you don't know her already. Bonnie did let us know that she is in Santa Barbara, California, a transplant from Connecticut. Bonnie had a really interesting career, and I don't know if any of your career stories will come out today, but now Bonnie is a keynote speaker and an author and an executive coach, and her company is Women's Success Coaching. And I'm so thrilled to have been able to work with Bonnie over the years, and she has some exciting new things coming, a new podcast, a new edition of her book, The Politics of Promotion, is coming in September, and we'll share more about that with you at the end of the hour. So welcome, Bonnie.
Good morning, Becky. It's morning here. I know it's afternoon there, but
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to be here.
As we get started today, one of the things that we wanted to do is to get a sense for those of you who are on the call about how this issue of giving away your power has affected your career. And we are going to go to a different poll right now, not the one that you're looking at. We're going to save this one for later. If I can figure that out, let's see. Hold on one second. You know what? This is going to be a little bit tricky. We're going to come back to the...
Becky, what we can do is ask them the question and they can answer in the chat, maybe.
Oh, what a perfect idea. So here's our question for you. How much does giving away your power affect your career success? And if you could, try to choose never, rarely, frequently, or all the time. And just help us get a sense of those of you who are on the call, this topic of giving away your power in the workplace. How much does that affect your career success? And I'm seeing a lot of frequently and all the times, only one rarely so far. And we're going to dig deeper into in what ways we give away our power later in the hour. But we really wanted to start by getting you thinking about how often do you give your power away? So this is interesting to see. I'm seeing frequently most. I'm not sure what you're seeing, Bonnie.
Yeah, frequently. Couple of all the times.
Oh my goodness.
You know, it should be interesting, I think, maybe even to do the question again at the end, because I think there's so many ways that we give our power away that we aren't even aware of, and how that could possibly affect our career, that the answers may change at the end. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I'm wondering also if people have any stories of like blatant ways they give their power away. And if you don't mind, Bonnie, just a really quick story from my own career. I re-entered the workforce in about 2009 after being home with my kids. I didn't have a ton of confidence. And the way I got back into my career is someone posted on Facebook that they needed a freelance writer. And you know what I did, Bonnie? I wrote to this high school friend, it was a man. I said, I heard you were looking for freelance writers. I know so and so and so and so and so and so. And then at the end, I said, I've always wanted to do freelance writing. I was giving away my power before I even got out of the gate. So I don't know if anyone has a story like that, but I often think back on it, and I've done that more than once in the second phase of my career, where someone is looking for something that I can do, and instead I offer up someone else.
And I saw somebody just wrote in the chat that sometimes they do it on purpose, and we're going to talk about that because sometimes we consciously give it away, and sometimes we subtly, unconsciously give it away. We're not even aware of it. So we do have a very interesting, complicated relationship with power as we.
Well, let's talk a little bit, Bonnie. Where does our power come from?
Becky, it comes from within. It comes from a belief in who we are, a belief in ourselves and our talent and our ability and our value. It's really knowing who we are. Mm-hmm. It's accepting who we are and owning that. So it's really internal. You might think that, well, if you have a big title, or if you're promoted, or even if you're elected to office, that's how you get power. But the truth of the matter is that if you don't own it, if you don't feel it within yourself, people may expect that you have that power, assume you have that power, but then over time, it's going to dissipate because of your inability to really embrace it and own it.
So you're saying it doesn't seem like the title or the position is what gives you the power.
Well, nobody can gift it to you, right? So you have that title. People make assumptions about you that you have the power, but if you don't really own it and you're not going to step into it, then quickly people are going to realize that you don't have that power. So I think what's important to know is that power comes from within. It's internal, not external. We may seek validation externally from other people, but if we're just basing our power on what other people think about us, that's not going to really be effective over the long term. And I think that our challenge today is that we have become very externally focused. That we feel good about ourselves when we've got 82 likes on Facebook or whatever, and probably feel a lot more confident and powerful, but it's not grounded in anything. So that if somebody says a negative comment about you, all of a sudden you're like swaying in the breeze because you don't have that kind of grounding. So you really need to understand who you are and accept who you are. And I think that's tied to a lot with confidence.
That's really helpful. So, Bonnie, can we talk a little bit more about why women seem to struggle so much with owning our power? So, I think what I'm picking up from you is oftentimes we fall into this trap of this external locus of control, thinking that people have to give us power or, somehow recognize our power. But instead, you're saying we need to shift the focus internally. So, why is this such a struggle for us as women?
It's a struggle because of our society tells us that powerful women are not acceptable. We have a negative view of women who are powerful, and we get messages about this. We get feedback about this. That when we stand in our power and we're assertive, we get negative comments all the time. And so then we make ourselves smaller because people think, oh, she's too big for herself, or they use the B word or whatever. But we also get messages from our family, from our friends, from our teachers. And if I look back on my own life, and I don't know whether this resonates with anybody else out there, I was a pretty powerful kid. I was so precocious that it probably borderline obnoxious, right? But I tried everything, did everything, was very successful. I tried musical instruments, I tried dancing, I tried, so, and I loved that. I was very, very confident. And it started, I don't know, I started to hit middle school maybe, or definitely high school, when the hormones kicked in and I looked around and maybe I wasn't as pretty as everyone, and that was so important. And I realized that I started to lose that sense of who I was. I was more externally focused, probably messages that, you should be a little more humble about yourself. You should wait to be recognized and not like really push yourself out there, which you do when you feel powerful and confident. And so from then on, I was like, I really started to play small and give my power away. And now that I look back on it, I can see it over the course of my life. That continued through grad school. Even when I was CEO of a company, I don't think I had the confidence to truly step in 120%.
Wow. So that kind of goes to your comment, Bonnie, about the fact that some people make an assumption that you own your power if you have a title. But I hope that no one missed that. When Bonnie served as a CEO of a major company, she's telling us that she didn't own her power at that time. So that's huge.
Yeah. The other thing I want to stress is that I think as a society, we have overall an interesting relationship with power, that we think, when you have power, you are controlling other people. It's power over other people. And that's not the way I'm looking at personal power. Personal power is standing in, who you are and owning that talent. So it's very different. And because in society, we tend to think of power in that kind of a negative way, that we're controlling or have power over other people. Women especially don't feel comfortable with that whole idea of power. And so there's that reluctance, that hesitancy to step into it and own it because of that.
So it seems like that comes from a misconception that power means power over others. And what you're really talking about is power with others or power within yourself.
Personal power. And that's what really affects us in our careers.
Got it. Sorry, I'm seeing some questions come in. And back to your question about when you were a CEO, Marianne is asking, what was it about that position that caused you to not feel as confident in your power at that time?
That's a really good question. I think it was more about where I was in my life at that time. And kind of struggling with, did I really want to run a national company? It's not that I really doubted my capabilities. It's just that I didn't step into it like 150%. A lot of that had to do with the circumstances of the company and the fact that I got there and found out that it was a house of cards, and it really wasn't the company that I needed to, that I thought it was. So a lot of it was circumstantial, and a lot of it was where I was at that point in my life. I had just turned 50, and I was really it was kind of the beginning of getting back into my power. And, my kids were kind of on their own at that point. And But I think it was in part circumstantial. I don't mean to, I'm jumping around here. It was partly circumstantial to what that position was, as well as where I was in my own life and trying to
Sure.
figure out what I wanted at that point.
Well, and I'm seeing a few people commenting about when they have lost their power or confidence, and a couple of our comments are about, it was a particular life stage. It was re-entering the workforce after being home with kids, or it was moving to a new place and facing some of those transitions.
Yeah.
To the question of, why do women struggle to own their power? It sounds like there are lots of reasons.
Well, and I think the major undercurrent is gender bias because women aren't allowed, if you want to use that word, to be powerful, whereas men, it's assumed that they can be powerful. And when women emerge as powerful, especially in the workplace, it's not viewed as favorably. It just isn't. And that has a lot to do with the way our society views women, the traditional stereotype roles of we need to be warm and nurturing, we can't be assertive. And so we're always walking the fine line between how do you be assertive, how do you really own your value and your talent, and then how do we be likable, and how do we manage and navigate the different things, the different dynamics in the workplace, knowing that, especially in an organization where there's still male leadership and male power sources, how do we position ourselves?
Well, and that's a great question, particularly if we have ambition or aspiration to lead. So, Bonnie, can we talk for a few minutes about the relationship between power and ambition and some of the pitfalls that women face when they are ambitious?
Yes, just as I said. So I don't know if you remember, of course you remember, the 2016 presidential, the election. And when Hillary was running for president, there were it was just such a great example of how our society views ambitious women and women who have power and ambition. And there were so many things written, articles written about her at that point, of that for her to assume that she could be president because she was and being a woman, there was a lot of negative stuff. I even wrote several articles about this because it was such an underlying theme, and why a lot of people couldn't even explain why they didn't like Hillary Clinton. I'm not even talking about politics here. There was just a lot of negativity from women too, men and women, who find that powerful, ambitious women are difficult to kind of accept. Whereas with a powerful man, it's like, it's like a no-brainer. I did a lot of research a couple of years ago that ended up in a white paper about women and ambition. And I was really curious how women felt about being ambitious. Did they own it? Who influenced their ambition? And whether or not that ambition really would waver over the course of their career. And I found out that many of the women who answered the survey, and there were almost 700 women, felt they self-identified as extremely or very ambitious. I was surprised. It was something like 78% of women who felt that way. And out of the very ambitious women, I asked them who influenced their ambition, and they said their biggest influencer was their mother. And then when I asked about whether or not their mother worked, it was if your mother worked and she was ambitious, then you
Mhm.
tend to be okay with identifying as ambitious. Um,
Interesting.
but there's a real, in order to declare your ambition, you have to own your personal power. You have to own that power. You have to know that you have the ability to succeed, the desire to succeed. And so it's really interwoven. Um, it's hard to be ambitious without owning your power.
Yeah, that's really helpful and powerful. And that connection about women, it almost seems like if your mother was ambitious or powerful, or you perceived her to be such, it's an opening or permission that you're able to give yourself. But if you lack that role model, whether it's your mother or someone else, maybe it's easier to struggle with owning your power.
Right. And when I look back on my role model, certainly the first one was my mom, and she completely gave her power away to my dad. And she never had a career, and she didn't go to college, and she really kind of kept herself in his shadow. She never really emerged. And when my father passed away, and she was still fairly young, she was like 60. Boy, whoa, then she really became powerful. It was like her time.
Huh.
And I don't know whether it's that generation, really, but it was difficult to find powerful female role models for me when I was younger. And for me to aspire to be CEO of a company, it was like, whoa, there was nobody that I really knew who had gone down that path. And so it was really pretty unusual for me to look and see role models like that.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of comments from folks that women have been influenced in the opposite way. So, in places where they've seen that their mother has given their power away, it may inspire them to own their own power. Um, we had a couple of comments on that. So, thanks to all of you who are so engaged in the chat.
Yes, it's
It's
great.
wonderful to see that. And, we're going to circle back to some of those questions when we open up toward the end. And here's a third person who's saying, yes, my mother gave away her power and I went the opposite way. Um, so thanks to you who are sharing your perspective. Well, I think that we want to shift now, Bonnie, to our poll and talk a little bit about the ways we give our power away. And I know, Bonnie, when you and I were working on this, preparing for the webinar, this list is enormous. And chances are when we see this list and I launch the polls, those of you who are on the call are going to identify with many, many, many of them. I know that I have. So feel free not only to answer the poll so that we can get a sense of so that we can get a sense of your perspective, but then we'd love to see your comments in the chat as well. So in what ways do you give your power away? And this is multiple choice. Here's some ideas. Do you use minimizing language?
Yeah, I'll
Bonnie,
explain what that is.
yeah, you can explain what that is. Unnecessary apologies, letting others take credit for your ideas, maybe a hesitancy to self-promote, not understanding or using your influence, not leveraging relationships, being reactive and not proactive, lacking allies and champions, and a desire to be liked. And then there is that second question that we're circling back to. It looks like both polls are running at once, Bonnie. How much does giving away your power affect your career success? So Bonnie, while folks are answering, do you want to share a little bit of insight into some of these, what they mean, how they show up?
So let me explain minimizing language. I'm going to start with a story, actually. A few years ago, I had the honor of I was invited to the Women's Campaign School at Yale. And that organization prepares women to run for public office. It's great organization. And they have these fantastic speakers come to talk about how you run a campaign, how you present yourself. It really fabulous. And one woman was introduced and she got up there. Now she had run John McCain's presidential campaign and had credentials as long as my arm. She goes up to the podium. She puts her stuff on the podium And she says, I just want to start with a couple of slides about this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, you just want to start. The word just should be thrown out of the English language. We don't realize how we use just and how that takes away from the power of what we are saying. It's almost like an apology. So here, this incredible woman got up there and she almost started out with an apology. Like, well, I just want to do this, like almost apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
So eliminating the word just would help you be extremely powerful. The other thing are qualifiers like I kinda, or maybe, or sort of. And that kind of language takes away from the power of what we're saying, from the directness. So what we're doing is we're trying to soften it,
Mm-hmm.
because we feel that if we're really direct, then people are going to be like taken back. So minimizing language is a very subtle way that we give power away.
So are there others that you want to give some color to as we move forward? I'm seeing so far, lots of responses, and we'll close the polling and share those results in a few moments. I'd love to hear you talk about unnecessary apologies. Why do we always feel the need to apologize, Bonnie, as women?
Again, because we're supposed to be the warm, nurturing sex, and we're expected to be that. We get caught up in that stereotype ourselves, and we want to soften things. Going down to the last one, we want to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
And so we feel that if we come on too strong, or we need to apologize. If we apologize, if we feel that we did something that upset somebody else, that they didn't take it the right way, we will soften it and we'll apologize. And sometimes we need to apologize, right? Sometimes we absolutely do need to apologize. I think it's powerful to say, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry if you took that the wrong way. But then we over apologize.
Mm-hmm.
We can apologize once and let it go, or we can keep apologizing and we give our power away that way.
So we have an attendee who said that she has a sticky note on her computer monitor to remind herself to stop apologizing and no justs. So that could be a key takeaway from today, plaster it. I don't know, maybe I need a tattoo on my arm.
You know what? If you have a really good colleague at work, a trusted colleague that you could ask, how many times, just remind me every time I say just,
Mm-hmm.
like raise your hand or send me a text or something. You'd be surprised how much you use it.
Well, and the same with minimizing language. We need to maybe raise our awareness to know when, here I go again, I just did it. I said we maybe need to raise our awareness. No, we don't maybe need to raise our awareness. We need to raise our awareness.
Yeah, we kind of do. We sort of do. But I think one of the underlying things on this list is our desire to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that runs through a lot of these other things. I mean, we're not going to say to somebody, that was really my idea. I brought that up in the beginning of the meeting because we don't want to bring attention to ourselves and we want people to like us.
Mm-hmm.
Our hesitancy to self-promote, we think that if we do that, people aren't going to like us. Again, that's definitely standing in our power. The apologies, the minimizing language to softens what we're saying so that people like us.
Mm-hmm. Well, an interesting comment here from Jane. She says that apologizing is a form of social glue that works with women, but not so much with men. So women get it, and then men might see us as being weak. And again, I want to acknowledge there are tons of questions and comments. We're going to get around to them, and we're so grateful for your engagement. So I'm going to close this polling so we can take a look at what folks are saying in terms of the way they give their power away. And let's share those results. It looks like, wow, Bonnie, 74% of the people on today's call give away their power because they are hesitant to self-promote. By far, that is the runaway winner. About
Mm.
52% of us have use unnecessary apologies, and 48% of us use minimizing language. So any thoughts on the results of this first poll, Bonnie?
Well, here's what I would like to put out to everybody. Think about how different your career path would be, how different your career would be in your life if you felt powerful enough, confident enough to advocate for yourself. It's really a game changer. And learning how to do that and learning how to do that effectively is really important for anyone's career. Much more challenging for women because we have to kind of navigate that double bind of, well, people won't like us, but on the other hand, if you are ambitious and you really want to advance your career, that red line there, that's something that you need to jump into and learn how to do effectively.
Wow, and I just made those results much larger, Bonnie. I'm looking at the second question. How does giving away your power affect your career? How often, how much does giving away your career power affect your career success? And 65%, there's that red line, frequently. Not one person said that it never affects their career success. And for a few of you, 22% say that it's rare that giving away your power affects your career success. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I think I did. Did I stop sharing? I did.
I still have it.
Oh, you
there.
still have it. Okay, now I
Yeah.
stopped sharing.
One of what I hope is the biggest takeaway from this today is that there are so many ways that we do give our power away that we are not aware of. And one of the things that I do with my clients a lot is say, well, what would be different in my life and career if I owned my power, if I owned who I am and my talent and my ambition? What would be different? And then when you ask yourself that question, you write this list. Well, maybe my relationship with my spouse would be better, or maybe I'd be leaving that relationship. Maybe my relationship with my boss would be stronger, and I'd be able to declare my ambition, and I would have gotten that promotion. I'd raise my hand more in meetings. People would really understand what my thoughts are and what my opinions are and what my ideas are. And that would help me get visibility. So there's just so many ways. And for whoever is on this call, I think it's a good idea to try to track these kinds of things about how do you give it away and what the result of giving it away is. Because when you see the result, then you are ready to change. When you see the impact that it has on your life and your career, then you say, well, I'm not willing to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to take my life in a different direction. And that's where you make the shift.
So can you identify, Bonnie, a time in your life where you made that shift? Or, maybe you have a story of a client of yours who had that kind of epiphany moment and then started to make the shifts to step into their own power.
Well, this exercise actually has been life-changing for many, many of my clients, because very often they'll come to me and they say, I really want to get ahead. I don't know why I'm not getting ahead. I missed out on a promotion. I'm really qualified. Why aren't I doing better? And my response to them is really that I can teach you how to promote yourself, how to build a strategic network, all the skills. But where we need to start, and this is where I start with all my clients, is what are some of the ways you're holding yourself back, right? What are some of the ways? Because if you're not stepping into, if you don't really know who you are, if you don't really know your value, I can teach you how to promote yourself, but you're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So that has really been the biggest shift with all of my clients. And if you're asking me about me, I learn something every day from my clients. And it's like a great reminder for me as well that it's so easy to slip. It's just because I don't know if it's in our DNA or what it is, but it's so easy to kind of shift and not really own who we are and step into who we are, that I get that reminder from working with my clients and speaking, whether, every day. And I have had, when women work with me and then and many of them do get those promotions afterward, it's really because of this shift, Becky, that takes place initially, is that learning how to navigate the workplace, all of this comes from kind of really owning and believing in yourself first.
And a few comments from folks who say it's not DNA, it's socialization, or it's our culture.
Yeah,
those messages that we're bombarded with, all of that. I want to go back to a question that I saw a few moments ago, Bonnie, that I thought was really powerful. And someone was asking about giving away power with money. And I'm trying to find it because there have been so many comments. And the person was commenting, what do I do when I took on additional responsibility at work and I did so without compensation? That feels like giving power away. So what suggestions might you have as it relates to that? And forgive me to whomever posted that question, I wasn't able to go back and find it. So if you want to repost.
That's a great question, whoever asked that question. I think a lot of that depends on your mindset about doing that. And without giving any kind of generalization, because I don't know the particulars, it depends really on those particulars in the situation and whether or not taking on that responsibility is strategic. So maybe you've negotiated, and this would be very powerful, that you will take on more responsibility with the idea that in 3 months, you'll get more compensation, or in 6 months. So it's not just taking on more responsibility, it's how you position it. How do you negotiate for it? If you just take on more and more stuff all the time, you become kind of a little bit like a doormat. And people don't see you as a leader. So that's not going to necessarily lead you to where you want to go if you have ambition. So I guess I answered it. You can still own your power depending on how you frame it. And a lot of that has to do with your mindset.
And I did
be liked. Am I doing it, because I feel like I have to do this from my boss or whatever, you probably are giving up your power. But if you stand in your power and say, I'm definitely willing to take that, I'm learning more stuff, but I also want to position myself to improve my compensation and get a different title.
So Jennifer, who's our chat host today, did find that question and posted again for me. And I'm fairly certain, Brooke, that we covered this. But what she said was, I took on a huge new responsibility this year at work at no additional compensation. I feel like a man would not have done the same.
Because a man would have negotiated. A man would have said, I'm not doing it, because the other thing is we don't like to say no. I'm not doing it, or I wouldn't negotiate the terms of taking that on. That's giving your power away.
Well, so I'm wondering, is there anything she can do now? So let's make the assumption, without an additional comment, let's make the assumption that she took it on without the conversation about why she was willing to take it on. What might you do at that point in terms of promoting yourself, or showcasing the fact that you are taking on additional responsibility and growing your skills?
Well, depending on how long she's been doing the new responsibility, I would say that after a certain period of time, it's time to revisit this with your boss and say that I've been doing this well, look at the results, and I would definitely bring concrete results, keep track of all the accomplishments and everything that you're doing, and say that that now I want to talk about what the title and the compensation could be.
That's helpful.
And if it's not immediate, then you negotiate then.
Well, and I'm seeing some comments, Bonnie, that in different people's organizations, women often take on extra work. And we had a question that we decided to drop that I think is really applicable. So let's try it. The question that we had planned to talk about is, what is the doer trap? And it seems like, this doing extra work is the doer trap. What is that, and how does that take away our power?
Well, it's everything we've talked about. It's that people will ask us to do things, whether it's extra projects like, oh, let's run the company picnic this year, even doing the office housework, taking notes during meetings, taking on more responsibility in the job. And we keep ourselves busy with all of this work, and we take it on because we believe that if we are accommodating, and if we are showing that we're committed and dedicated by doing this, that's going to help us get ahead. But the reason I call it the doer trap is, well, there are a couple of reasons. Because we're doing all the time. And we're not being seen, therefore, as a leader. We're seen as a doer. And if I could say, some of the biggest shifts that some of my clients have made is moving from being a doer to a leader. And how do you do that? Is beginning to say no, empowering others. Say somebody's, oh, will you do the company picnic again this year? You did such a great job last year. And then they keep asking you, and instead saying, so-and-so is on my team. What about if I train her or I show her how to take on this project, and you empower somebody else to do it? You delegate. Is another big way to do it. Because when you do that, you are showing up more as a leader. The other thing is about the doer trap is that when we are so busy doing all this stuff on top of our job, we don't have any time to really think strategically about our career and where we're going. And having that time to think strategically really sets you apart and begins to help position you as a leader. For instance, I got these great results when I tried this new approach with my team. Right. If I'm thinking strategically, I'm thinking, well, how can I leverage this? Because often we're too busy. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Becky's team would benefit from this. Maybe I should do a lunch and learn. Maybe I should meet with somebody else in a different business unit and share this new approach, and bring my team and share that new approach. And then I get more visibility and credibility. But when we're busy doing all this stuff, we don't have time to think strategically. Mm-hmm. So it's a trap.
So what ideas do you have about getting away from the trap?
Mm-hmm. Being strategic about what you take on. Because here's the other thing. And I met with a group of professors at University of Richmond a couple of years ago, and we were talking about this. And they said, oh, they're always volunteering. They're doing all this stuff. The male professors never do any of this stuff. They're doing more mentoring, and I said, well, let me ask you this. At the end of the year, when you are being reviewed, your performance is being reviewed, how much of this mentoring and all this stuff comes up? Is it important? And they said, none of it. Now, I'm not saying drop it and don't be a mentor anymore, but I think when you're in the workplace and you're doing all this extra stuff, you need to ask yourself, think strategically, is this going to show up in my performance review? Is this going to help me? And then make decisions based on that.
And we're getting some comments that people love this focus on the strategic. So we've talked a lot so far about ways we give our power away. And so as we're building this new awareness, Bonnie, about how we give our power away, I would love it if we could shift now and talk about how we can get it back.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to declare your ambition and to own it. If you have aspirations, you should share that with your boss. Sorry. You should share it and don't be afraid to share it. I've been in workshops where I ask women to put down like their 3-year, their 5-year goal. And I've seen women sit there and they're like, they can't do it.
Hmm.
Paralyzed, because if they write it down, then, oh my gosh, So figure out what that is and stand in your power and declare it and have those conversations. And then have the conversations of, well, how do you get from A to B? What do I need in terms of more experience, et cetera, resources? Sorry. Mm.
Glad you got that water.
I'm so glad. Not helping. Another way is to identify all your negative self-talk and quiet it. We don't get rid of it completely, but we can silence it and not pay that much attention to it, because that'll definitely rob us of our power.
So I'm going to give you a chance to have some water, and so many good questions. So Beth has a comment back to what we were talking about with the doer trap. Take the time to think about whether you want to do something or not, and then give yourself permission. Tell someone you need time to think about it instead of giving them an answer right away. So that's really, really helpful. So anything else, Bonnie, on the topic of how we can get our power back? So first, own your ambition.
Right. Replace negative self-talk.
Quiet it, yes.
Ask for help when you need it. People think that's a weakness, but it helps position you to be successful. Spend some quiet time, some strategic time, thinking about your career and where you want to go, and practice self-care. That old thing about the airline and putting the oxygen on the child before you, and how we always tend to do that. We take care of everybody else first. And since I'm doing a lot of research about older women for my next book, I think that has a lot to do with how older women kind of begin to get their power back, is that now their kids are kind of on their own. And we've always focused on everybody else first and not ourselves first. And so we get more powerful the more we nurture ourselves, take care of ourselves. And we should do that our whole life. But we don't. Sometimes when we have an empty nest, then we're like, oh, I could really do that now, So we should do that. I think it's also powerful to acknowledge your fears and deal with them, and see how some of these fears might hold you back from being who you are and stepping into your full power. That's also a lot of work that I will do with my clients. Advocate for yourself. We've talked about that. Advocate for others. Share your opinions and ideas. Raise your hand. All of these things help you to reconnect with who you are and the value that you bring. And anybody who's on this call who knows my work knows that understanding your value is really so important. What is it that you contribute? And how do other people benefit from your work and from who you are? And when you do that, it's so powerful, because you get it. You get how you can be of service to others, how you can help the business move forward. So understanding your value is a biggie. It's the foundation, I think.
So many suggestions there. If one of them resonated with you, I would love to have you share that in the chat. So of the ideas that Bonnie shared about how to get your power back, if you've been giving it away consciously or unconsciously, I'd love to hear which ones of those you might be willing to try as you seek to own your power. We're going to shift now and come back to some questions. And, as we've said a few times, there are so many comments and questions that have been in the chat. So if you want to take the time to restate any questions that we might have missed before, or if you have any new questions that you'd like us to cover, I want to remind you, please stay on till the end. A lot of times folks will drop off. We have just about 12 more minutes together, and we have a very special giveaway at the end. And so we hope that you'll stay on because, honestly, so much of the value of these gatherings is what you all are each saying to and with each other. So we're thrilled to see that. So here's some comments that people like about getting the power back. Carmen likes the idea of strategic quiet time, thinking about her career and where she wants to go, acknowledging fears and dealing with them. Dealing with them is a big challenge, but so necessary. Understanding your value and how others benefit from your worth, handling negative self-talk, being aware of giving it away is a good start, and then slowing down and shifting from doing to more strategic thinking.
That's kind of the basic thing of where to start.
Those are really powerful. So here's a question from Jane. Bonnie, what's your recommendation for bringing like-minded men into reducing the risk for women to step into their power?
Bringing like-minded men.
So, how do we capture the energy of men to make it, to set up situations where women can own their power more effectively in the workplace?
So if I understand the question correctly, I'm not sure I do. If I understand it, it's helping men understand how women give their power away and helping facilitate situations where women can step into their power.
Yes, correct. I think so. And Jane, you can feel free to clarify if needed.
So it's similar, I think, to any kind of microaggression that we talk about post-Me Too, when men are simply unaware of when they're mansplaining or just taking credit for some of our ideas. And I do not believe that we should let those pass. We should let those just go unacknowledged. We should have a conversation with the man, and it's probably one-on-one, about how that made you feel and bring their awareness. If we don't help men become more aware of some of the things they do to take our power away and how easily we give it up, and how that therefore doesn't benefit the business really, then it's a lost situation. But similar to Me Too, I would say, if somebody takes credit, I'll tell my clients, if they don't have a buddy in the room who says, oh, Bonnie said that an hour ago, that when somebody takes credit for your idea, you should say, thank you for acknowledging, that idea that I shared earlier. I really appreciate you bringing that up again, or something like that. We shouldn't be steamrolled, and whether we're doing it in public or we have these private conversations, we need to help men become more aware of when they take the power away and how we can then take it back.
Sure. So an example that Jane shared was helping men see that a woman who negotiates for herself isn't being selfish.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So many comments and questions. So one comment is that having a good mentor makes a big difference for women who want to step into their power. And Sharon says that men need to step up and be allies. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at the gender breakdown on this call. If you're a man who's on this call and you have a comment or a question, we would love to hear from you as well, and willing to take many more questions. And I'm just going to take a quick moment here, Bonnie, and try to scroll back and get back to some of those earlier questions if I can. While I'm doing that, wondering if you have any other stories from your coaching clients that you could share while I'm looking for some of these questions.
Let's see. relative to power.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot in terms of thinking strategically and taking the power back around your career. One of my clients came to me also that she didn't get a promotion. She didn't understand why, and she was definitely stuck in the doer trap. And when I identified what she was doing, she was like, well, how do I get out of that? So thinking strategically, learning how to say no really changed her career. But it was taking some time each week to cross out on your calendar some blank time where you're not available to your team, the phone isn't ringing, and you're not in a meeting and you're not looking at emails, you are unplugged. And use that time to fuel yourself in whatever way. So what I recommended to her was think strategically about your career, how you can leverage results. You know, she did it on her commute home on the train every day for like 30 minutes. She got 2 promotions in the 18 months that I was working with her. But even if it's not leveraging that, it's thinking about taking that time and writing down, what did I accomplish today? Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that I did today, big and small, that need acknowledgement? I call that a success journal. It doesn't need to be a formal journal, but taking the time to acknowledge some of the things that you have done during the day, even if it's like, oh, I had such a tough day at work. I raced home. I was home in time for soccer practice for my daughter and did homework with, how do I balance all this? What have you achieved during the day that you take for granted? Mm-hmm. And reconnecting with that is a really powerful fuel source and connection to what is great about you, what you bring to the world.
That's really helpful. And I do love the idea of the success journal, as does Wendy, who's commenting that she's going to try it. We have a couple more questions that we're going to try to get to. Here's a question. How do you strategically handle the desire to be liked and the issue of reputation within team, department, company, etc.? So how can you balance the desire to be liked with
showing up as a leader?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. So women are walking this tightrope where the expectation is that we be nurturing and sweet and nice and helpful. And on the other hand, when we do all those things to an excess, we're not viewed as having leadership potential. If we are very assertive and strong, we may show up as a leader, but then nobody likes us. And because of the way we view women who are assertive, and so then we don't get to be a leader either, because nobody wants to work with us. So we need to develop the savvy to understand how to balance the two. If you are running a team, you need to be assertive, you need to be clear, you need to be direct without any minimizing language about what expectations are for your team or for your direct report. Be very clear, but that doesn't mean that there aren't times when you connect with your team and ask them about their personal stuff if that's relevant, and nurture that team person and help them, empower them to be really better in their jobs. So we need to know how to balance the two to show up as a leader, not 100% one or 100% the other. And listening for kind of the cues of when to balance it and when to do a little bit of both.
So it's a skill that we can develop over time.
Mhm.
So we want that concludes the time that we have to devote to questions. I promised to give away, and I'm so thrilled to tell you that we have 8 copies of Bonnie's book, The Politics of Promotion. There are very few of these hardcover books left in the world, about 115, and we have 8 of them to give away to the first 8 people that give us some feedback about today's event related to how you've given away power in the workplace, what changes you're willing to make to get them back. And Jennifer is sharing the link to that form here in the chat. It will also be in the follow-up email that we're going to send out to you later this afternoon. So we welcome you to go to the form. Please share your insights with us, and my team and I will be getting these books out to you in the next few days. So that you can learn some more from Bonnie on various topics. I also want to make sure that you're aware that we do have 5 more webinars coming up in the Women's Empowerment series, and the next one is on September 11th, and the topic is What's Changed in the Workforce Post Me Too. It's going to be a really amazing conversation. It's also going to be a launch celebration because Bonnie's book, The Politics of Promotion, is coming out in a paperback edition with a new foreword. And so that second webinar in the series does coincide with the release of Bonnie's new edition of her book. We hope that you'll use the link to sign up. We don't want you to miss it. And not only are we going to have that webinar, but after the webinar, we're going to have an open meeting on Zoom where you can come on camera, talk directly to Bonnie, and have some conversation with us on these important topics. So if you enjoyed today's event, we hope you'll register for the next event in the series. You'll invite your friends and colleagues. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a recording of today's event that you can share with others. I personally have been challenged in so many ways by today's conversation to become more aware of the ways that I every day fall into these traps. And Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Oh, my pleasure. It was great.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next time.